From SCNR.com, large majority of Republicans support the idea of Trump being a dictator for a day. You know, the funny thing is Trump didn't actually say he would in the literal sense. He was just like, when he was asked, he said only on day one, and so he could drill for oil and secure the border. And it's like, okay, what people are actually suggesting is that you just go and arrest everybody. Military tribunals, I think Roseanne asked for. 74% majority of Republican voters say they support the idea of former President Donald Trump being a dictator for a day if he's reelected. A new survey from the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and YouGov found 36% of independent voters also support the prospect. Wow. I don't. I support Donald Trump using his legal authority, which he already has and doesn't need to be a dictator, to start getting rid of the corruption. I want evidence. I want criminal trials. We don't need a dictator just to go in and start deciding who should and shouldn't be. I want the public to see the evidence. I want it to be historic. I want it to be documented. I want there to be a book, a Wikipedia entry, talking all about all of the evidence that was uncovered and how Donald Trump got an AG in there and cleaned this place up.
I like the hysteria around the Donald Trump dictator for a day comment because it's like they're just hooked on cartoons and they're expecting the villain to be like, well, my plan is to become a dictator. Like, you think someone who actually wants to be a dictator leads with, I'm going to be a dictator.
Well, but to be fair, it's the distinction between cartoons for 10-year-olds and cartoons for 5-year-olds and cartoons for 10-year-olds. The cartoons for 10-year-olds are a little bit more sophisticated than that. Like I mentioned this before. It's a great line from Justice League where Lex Luthor, the supervillain, is running for president. And when one of the Justice League confronts him, a character called The Question, Luthor says, do you have any idea how much power I would have to give up in order to be president? It's like even 10-year-olds understand the context there. And these people are thinking like it's like they're 5 and the villain's like, I'm going to freeze the earth.
Yeah, Snidely Whiplash. You guys ever watch that?
No, what's that?
It was Rocky and Bullwinkle. That's some pretty basic stuff. It was right in your face. Snidely was like the guy who was like,
did he say, I'm going to be a dictator?
He was always like the villain. You know, he's twirling his mustache literally.
I got to tell you, because this, I was telling this story all week about this guy I met in D.C. quite literally told me, just you wait. When Donald Trump gets elected, you will lose all your rights. I'm like, bro.
It's projection. It's projection, though. Totally. I think Joe Biden is, cliche, but the true dictator, you look at whether it's the weaponization of the DOJ, the lawfare, the way that they're conducting global affairs, it's clearly just projection. And I think the old way that they did the projection playbook was sort of the Russia, like foreign collusion, because obviously the Democratic Party and of course establishment Republicans too, but are always colluding with foreign governments. But I think they know the Russia trope is sort of used up. I think you used to see the Black Lives Matter stuff always pop up right before elections, right? I think they realized that ad hominem racist attacks don't work as much anymore. And now I think they're really going down. They have 2, I would say, concurrent strategies. One is democracy's going to die in darkness and Trump is a dictator. Oh, even, appeal to the neocons, we must preserve our way of life. But I also think the sort of other route that they're going down is, I don't know. I think it's really just I don't know. It's just always projection, and it's, I don't know. It's just the same. It's you could do that with every story.
I kind of think we're headed towards a wartime presidency, as many people try to refer to it. I don't know what to do. I don't know how you solve this problem, but a bifurcated culture, a postmodernist and a, traditional American republicanist world, they can't coexist. And so I don't think it's a matter of what anyone wants to happen. It doesn't matter if you want Trump to be a dictator or not. There will come a point where there is no question.
Yeah,
you're not allowed to ask. Trump will not decide. It will just be in front of you. When you face down with far leftists trying to seize territory in cities like they did in 2020, shooting and killing people, eventually you get to the point where you're then we have to have armed guards and creating checkpoints. It's not a question of I would like or I would not like. When the far left, if the far left violence exceeds a certain degree, there will be a response. And then you'll walk down the street and you're going to have National Guard and they're going to be you need an ID and you're whatever. And you're going to be this is dictatorship. And they're going to be okay, if we leave, the far leftists will come in with their guns again. And then what do?
You
create a republic.
It's what is it? The thesis, antithesis, synthesis, or whatever that is. It's I think the reason why, I think there is some truth to this poll in the sense that Joe Biden is such a weak man, Trump is such a strong man. And I think when you look around the country and you see particularly what's going on at the southern border, I mean, I think you make a valid case for wanting a strong leader who's actually going to protect national sovereignty. And I think in some ways it sort of reflects that longing, that yearning for like America to be a country again with a leader, with a government that actually does something to fight for the people. And it's not all totally decentralized and sent out to all these like swampy bureaucratic agencies. Like I think from a social perspective, the desire for a dictator, there is something interesting there in terms of how it interplays with, I think, a lot of the critiques we hear of like decentralizing and deconstructing the administrative state, right? Because that really is a way of diffusing power to unelected bureaucrats. And I don't know about you, I personally would rather have dictator Trump than President Trump compounded with, like bureaucrat, overlord Fauci and Milley.
And that's probably it.
Yeah.
When it comes to this question, people are probably saying there is too much corruption in DC. It is a swamp, and you need someone to just go in and drain it.
It's if you don't know how to solve the problem, you may lash out at stupid solutions because you just want to get this problem over with. Like if the problem is deep state corruption, that's a big problem. How do you solve it? Well, a lot of people are like, I don't know. Best thing I can think of is some guy goes in and does it. But like there's ways to do it, technical ways to do it. You just got to have controlled power sources. You got to have control of mass media like airwaves, like radio waves and stuff like that. If you have your own satellites, things like that, you can kind of maintain open systems where information can be traded, behaviors can become transparent, and then I think the system kind of solves itself.
I think part of why people who support Trump understood that the dictator comment was more about I'm going to take action immediately is because they're tired of the way that the Biden administration does implement authoritarian culture while pretending they're for you. They're pretending they're for democracy. And I think the idea that someone would be direct and be like, yes, on the first day, I'm immediately going to do these things is refreshing. It's appealing. Like you're saying, it's an appeal to strength. And I think Biden is notoriously unpopular and he doesn't have the approval ratings that really I think would predict an easy win to re-election. And so ultimately Trump, by just being direct, saying these are the problems you're facing and I'm going to fix them. And if I have to be, if I have to make that my number one priority from day one, I will do that for you, makes people feel like they can trust him to change. Whereas the Biden administration is sort of always saying a lot of things and doing nothing. I mean, right, to talk about the border, they initially, with all of the razor wire stuff, said, you have to pull the razor wire out because it's inhumane and people will drown. And they're like, that's why I put it, Texas says, that's why I put it there, because we don't want people to swim across the river. It's dangerous. At which point the Biden administration said, actually, you needed our approval for that. And that's why you have to take it out. I mean, the Biden administration is ultimately trying to keep the borders open and they want there to be a flow of illegal immigration into the country. But they won't just say that. And so that fact that someone would be like, yes, I would be a dictator to change, to turn the ship, to make things right, I think freaks out people who know ultimately Trump has the same values as them and wouldn't be a dictator, as opposed to someone who is constantly saying, no, I have your values, but I'm lying to you constantly and doing one thing, claiming to be doing another.
Yeah, they because if you say I'm not a dictator, but you're signing executive orders over and over and over, then you are a dictator and you're lying to people.
Yeah, I'm not a dictator, but you all have to wear masks. I'm not a dictator, but you have to leave the military if you don't get the vaccination. I'm not a dictator, but I'm going to fight the state's rights to defend itself until I am left at the point where states are starting to turn against me. I'm not a dictator, you are, but I'm actually going to do everything I can to maintain as much power and be disruptive as possible.
I'm not a dictator, but my family's going to profit millions of dollars off of contracts with China and Ukraine.
Right. I'm not a dictator, but my son's going to get a really, really nice plea deal until you guys catch it, and I have to sort of pretend otherwise.
I got like two thoughts. One is Trump, he kind of got caught out of context saying that he was going to be a dictator on day one. They asked him in that interview, are you going to be a dictator again? And he's like, not even listening. He's like, only on day one, I'm going to close the border.
He was joking.
And
yes?
Yeah, and he wasn't really even answering the question they asked. He was just like, on day one, I'm going to do some extreme stuff. But this fervor for that even people would consider wanting this dictatorship in any way is like Roman Republic stuff. I mean, Julius Caesar came back with his troops and established a dictatorship because the Republic was so busted.
Was it 200 years of prosperity?
Well, they wrote the history books, so it's tough to tell. And I'm sure the rich Romans were getting on very good, but there's no the rest of society.
There's no way for 200 years you suppress dissent from people fleeing the country, especially in that era.
Man, I have no idea. They wrote all those history books. It's tough to tell. They just conquered and conquered.
Yeah, but anybody could just leave and be like, here's what happened, and people would know. You know what I mean? Like, it would be within the writings of all neighboring nations, whatever, that it was terrible within the Roman Empire. There was no prosperity.
I don't hear a lot about the brutality of the Romans. I know that they were brutal to the non-Romans, to the sub-citizens, the slave class and the foreigners that lived there, but they don't talk a lot about it in the history books, at least not the ones I've been reading.
Hey, we have talked about this quite a bit, that are we in the collapse of the Roman Empire or the start of the Roman Empire?
Yeah, it's like the Republic is shuddering, I would say. That doesn't mean it's going to fall apart necessarily, but it feels like the walls are shaking right now. And like, whoa, what's that green ooze pouring out of the walls? How long has that been in there?
What if there's like
years?
An attempt on Trump's life and it causes him like disfiguration to his right side, but he also has to use like a voice box, so he's wearing like a mask. And then he's just like, I have dissolved the Senate. This is the new American Empire.
Yeah, no Mace Windu heroics. We don't need any of that. I don't know, man. I don't know if it's cyclical. If there's anything we can do to help stop or make it better, I'm sure there is. Just gotta be
I wonder,
make
man,
what
like,
better?
The transition from the American Republic into the New World Order. Like it's gonna be. We're part of a bigger global system now. The Republic's got some awesome ideals, and if we can inspire free speech all over the globe, that could be part of the system.
That's not part of the global agenda.
Corporations don't like free speech. They want the owner of the corporation to run the show. That's the problem.
I think part of the reason that they have been so adamantly opposed to Trump winning this year, and they've really, I think, ratcheted up the attacks, particularly on the lawfare front. I think if you look at a lot of these kind of global agendas, whether it's like the UN and their sustainable development goals, the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset, a lot of, or even the Made in China 2025 initiative, but a lot of these kind of master plans, I would say the kind of ideological underpinning or framework, like if you really drill down as to what actually constitutes the New World Order, they're all set to conclude in 2030. And I think if you do the math, right, 2025, the term would start, it ends 2029. A Trump term now, as like a second, third Trump term, would be absolutely, a death knell, I think in some ways you could argue, for a lot, or at least a strong impediment to for their ability to really roll out a lot of these global agendas. And I think that's why they are in such heavy, full out panic mode about ensuring that Trump doesn't win this election.
Yeah, and I think that's backed up by the way he ripped up the Trans-Pacific Partnership day 3 after he got in, was like, we're not selling out.
Defunding the WHO. I think you can definitely make the case that he could have done more, but put it this way, if the only person in between us becoming, New World Order, WHO, WEF, UN slaves, would you rather have it be Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, or Joe Biden?
Well, I know Trump a little better. I know the people that know him anyway, and I'd like to hang out with him. But I think that if he starts saying like, we all want a new world order, this American military base everywhere stomping on the neck of humanity is not good anymore. Let's figure out a better way. If he was like open, he's like, we're going to make a new world order and it's going to have American ideals at the center of it.
A new world order with American nationalism, economic nationalism. But I'm not speaking on behalf of Trump, but his conception, I think, particularly if you look at how he has reformed the Republican Party, putting back in that economic nationalist populist perspective, at the bedrock of that is sovereignty, and the bedrock of sovereignty is borders. And that concept of borders and nation states, whether it's the Westphalian nation system or what we should have here with a secure southern border, that is fundamentally at odds with the concept that these New World Order type groups are pushing, which is global government, right? Because that implies that we're global citizens and that there's a global sovereign. And I don't think that Donald Trump or the kind of new version of the MAGA Republican Party believes in that to any extent. And I would say look no further than the fact that the guy who was advising the WHO on drafting a lot of the pretext to the current pandemic treaty that they're debating was Joe Biden's top biohealth advisor. So there's this very, very icky overlap between a lot of the WHOs, that even Joe Biden's supply chain sustainability coordinator is like a World Economic Forum alum. So all of these people have like weaseled their way in to really, I was going to say subvert, but it's not to subvert the Biden regime, it's to amplify, and I think to really complement what is this idea of global government, this idea that being an American doesn't mean anything. Look no further than the fact that in New York, they're handing out IDs to illegal aliens. That is like such a metaphorical example of what American citizenship means to these people. And it means nothing because they don't believe in borders, because they're globalists to their core.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.